The first thing Vanessa Whitcomb said to me was, "You can own the lake, but you can't own the way people get to it." 6 minutes later, her maintenance crew cut the chain on my gate. I heard it from inside the old boathouse at 6:18 on a Saturday morning. Clang, clang, snap. The sound carried across Hollow Pine Lake so cleanly that I stopped with my coffee halfway to my mouth. Then came the low electric whine of golf carts, tires grinding over gravel, and voices drifting through the pines. I set the mug down and walked outside. Morning fog was still hanging over the water, thin as smoke, and the air smelled like wet cedar and cold mud. At the eastern entrance, maybe 200 yards away, two men in gray maintenance shirts were pulling my steel chain through the gate posts. The brand-new padlock lay in the dirt. Behind them waited 3 golf carts, half a dozen SUVs, kayaks strapped to roof racks, coolers stacked in trunks, and at least 20 residents from Bellwether Ridge. Standing in front of all of them was Vanessa. White visor, cream-colored jacket, oversized sunglasses, clipboard tucked against her ribs like she was arriving for an inspection she'd scheduled on property she owned. She didn't own 1 square foot of it. "My name is Caleb Mercer. I'm 43 years old, a licensed land surveyor, and 3 weeks earlier I'd signed the papers purchasing 74 acres of water, shoreline, woods, an aging boathouse, and the narrow access parcel connecting Hollow Pine Lake to the county road. Every boundary had been checked before closing. I knew where my property started down to the survey monuments buried beneath the soil. Vanessa apparently thought confidence could move property lines. I walked toward the gate, boots crunching over gravel. She saw me coming and didn't even flinch. "Morning, Mr. Mercer," she said. "We're restoring resident access." I looked at the broken lock, then at her. "You cut my chain. Your chain was obstructing a public access point." Somewhere behind her, a kayak buckle clicked against a roof rack. Nobody spoke. "This isn't public," I said. Vanessa gave me the kind of patient smile people use when they think they're explaining something to a child. "Bellwether Ridge residents have used this lake for years. You purchasing it doesn't erase established access." One of the maintenance guys stopped touching the gate. "Smart man." Vanessa pointed toward the water. "These families paid for lake privileges when they purchased their homes." "Paid who?" Her smile tightened. "Just slightly. The association." That answer stayed with me. I looked past her at the families waiting to get through, then down beside her white sneakers. Half buried in the damp soil was the rust-colored top of an old iron survey pin. Vanessa was standing less than 2 feet from it. I knew what that pin meant. She didn't. And she had no idea that the brown folder sitting on my passenger seat contained the recorded deed to the lake, the shoreline, and something far more important than either of them: the only legal road leading to the water. 3 weeks earlier, Hollow Pine Lake had looked like the kind of place everybody else had forgotten. That was exactly why I wanted it. The first time Dale Hargrove showed me the property, we drove nearly half a mile down a narrow dirt road beneath tall pines before the trees opened and 74 acres of dark blue water appeared below us. No jet skis, no music, no rows of identical docks. Just wind moving through pine needles and the soft knock of water against an old wooden boathouse. I had spent 21 years surveying property for other people, walking fence lines in August heat, digging for buried monuments in frozen ground, and explaining to angry neighbors that a line on a map did not move simply because somebody wished it did. I wanted one piece of ground where nobody needed me to settle an argument. Hollow Pine looked like that place. Dale was 68, lean, sunburned, and quiet. His family had owned the lake since his father purchased the surrounding acreage decades earlier. He was selling because maintaining it had become more work than he wanted. The boathouse roof sagged along one corner. The eastern gate was orange with rust. Blackberry vines had swallowed part of the shoreline trail. None of that bothered me. I could repair wood. I could clear brush. Boundaries were what mattered. Before closing, I reviewed the legal description, county parcel maps, tax records, and recorded documents tied to the property. The purchase included the lake, the shoreline parcels, the boathouse, and a narrow strip of land running east toward the county road. There was no homeowners association covenant attached to my deed. Nothing I saw granted Bellwether Ridge control over my property. Still, something bothered me during that first inspection. A worn dirt trail came down from the subdivision and joined my access road near the eastern gate. Tire tracks pressed into the dust. Fresh ones. Dale noticed me studying them. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of his coffee cup and said, "Those people behind you think this lake came with their houses." I looked toward the rooftops visible through the trees. "Do they have an easement?" Dale gave a dry little laugh. "They have opinions." I should have asked more questions right there. Instead, I assumed it was ordinary neighbor friction, the kind that disappears when everybody sees a recorded survey. At closing, Dale handed me the keys and a battered cardboard records box that smelled like old paper and basement dust. Inside were tax receipts, maintenance invoices, faded maps, and correspondence going back decades. He tapped one yellow envelope wedged against the side. "Do not throw that away." I asked what it was. "Old business," he said. "Might matter someday." I put the box behind the seat of my pickup and forgot about it. For the next 2 weeks, I worked on the property every evening. I replaced rotten boards on the dock, cleared fallen limbs, and installed a new chain and padlock at the eastern gate. The lake became quiet again after sunset. Then, on my third Thursday there, I heard tires rolling slowly over gravel. A white sport utility vehicle stopped beside my truck. The driver's door opened, and Vanessa Whitcomb stepped out holding a clipboard. She looked at my work boots, then at the tools beside me. "You need to move your truck," she said. "Residents use this entrance." I wiped sawdust from my hands. "Residents of what?" She pointed toward Bellwether Ridge. "The community." I glanced at the gate, then back at her. "This entrance is private property." She sighed, not surprised, annoyed. "Contractors are supposed to coordinate access changes through the association." That almost made me smile. "I am not a contractor." Her eyes narrowed. "Then who are you?" I picked up the ring of keys Dale had handed me at closing. "The owner." For the first time, Vanessa stopped talking. Vanessa stared at the keys in my hand for maybe 2 seconds, but I could see the calculation happening behind those oversized sunglasses. Most people would have apologized. Vanessa adjusted the clipboard against her hip. "You bought Hollow Pine?" she asked. "Closed 2 weeks ago." Her expression changed, but not in the direction I expected. The annoyance disappeared. In its place came something smoother, more practiced. "Then nobody explained the access arrangement to you." She said it like the closing attorney had forgotten to mention the furnace. I set my tape measure on the tailgate. "What access arrangement?" Vanessa pointed toward the dirt trail behind her. "Bellwether Ridge has established recreational access to the lake. Fishing, kayaking, family use. That entrance has served the community for years." The evening air smelled like fresh sawdust and pine sap. Somewhere across the water, a base broke the surface with a soft splash. "Recorded easement?" I asked. Her mouth tightened. "Established access." That is not what I asked. She lowered the sunglasses enough to look directly at me. "Mr. Mercer, I have been president of the Bellwether Ridge Homeowners Association for 6 years. I assure you, our residents have lake privileges." There it was. Not a document. Not a recording number. Authority by repetition. I had heard versions of it my entire career. Somebody mows beyond a fence for 10 years and suddenly believes the grass belongs to them. Somebody drives across a field every summer and starts calling tire tracks a road. I kept my voice level. "If your association has a recorded right to cross this parcel, send me the document." Vanessa gave a small laugh. "Property ownership does not erase established access." Then she walked back to her sport utility vehicle. Before getting in, she turned around. "I would strongly recommend that you do not interfere with residents while we straighten this out." The engine started with a quiet hum, and her tires rolled away through the gravel. The next morning, I found an envelope taped to the gate. Heavy cream paper, Bellwether Ridge letterhead. Inside was something called the Lake Access Policy. It listed permitted hours from sunrise to 9 o'clock at night, rules for fishing, kayak storage, guest limits, shoreline conduct, and a section requiring residents to display association-issued lake tags. I read the entire thing twice. My name was nowhere on it. Neither was Dale Hargrove's. More importantly, there was no deed reference, easement number, county recording stamp, or legal description. It was an internal homeowners association policy governing land the association did not appear to own. I folded it and put it in my truck. That afternoon, 2 kayaks were pulled onto my shoreline. On Saturday, a family had set folding chairs beside the old boathouse. They were polite when I approached them, which made the situation stranger. The father showed me a blue plastic tag hanging from his cooler. "We pay for this," he said. "It comes through the association." "Pay how?" "Lake fee." I felt something shift in my stomach. How much? For $180 a year. He looked confused by my expression. I was confused too. That night, I opened the Bellwether Ridge community website. Right there beneath photographs of landscaped entrances and matching brick homes was a photograph of hollow pine at sunset. Under it were 4 words that changed the entire problem: private community lake access. I started checking real estate listings. House after house advertised the same amenity: fishing, kayaking, private lake privileges. Vanessa was not merely claiming access. Bellwether Ridge had been selling the idea of my lake to homeowners, and somebody had been collecting money for it. I leaned back from the computer and listened to the refrigerator humming in the quiet cabin. Then I remembered Vanessa telling me not to interfere. I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it Bellwether Ridge. The first file I saved was her lake access policy. By Monday morning, the gate had become the center of a fight I had never agreed to join. I replaced the chain with a heavier weatherproof one, photographed the posts, measured their exact position, and installed a simple sign that read private property. No lake access without owner permission. Nothing dramatic. Nothing threatening. Just 6 words that matched the deed sitting in my truck. At 8:43 that morning, my phone buzzed with an email from Bellwether Ridge. The subject line said Notice of Access Violation. I actually checked the recipient twice. Vanessa was issuing me a homeowners association violation on property that was not inside her homeowners association. The letter claimed my gate created an unauthorized obstruction of a community recreational corridor and gave me 72 hours to restore access. It also mentioned possible legal expenses if the association had to enforce its rights. I printed it, filed it, said nothing. Tuesday brought another email. Wednesday brought a certified letter. By Thursday, somebody had planted a professionally printed sign beside my eastern entrance. Bellwether Ridge Community Lake Access. The posts were driven nearly 2 feet into my soil. I stood there smelling fresh-cut lumber and damp earth while a blue jay screamed from a pine above me. Vanessa was no longer pretending this was a misunderstanding. She was marking my property as hers. I photographed the sign from every angle, measured its location from the nearest survey monument, and added everything to my folder. Then the residents started arriving in larger numbers. Most were not rude. That was what made Vanessa's strategy effective. She had told them I was the problem. One older couple said they had purchased their home specifically because the listing promised lake privileges. A mother with 2 children showed me her annual association statement. There it was again. Lake amenity fee, $480. She had paid it for 5 years. We were told this was maintained by the association, she said. I looked around at the leaning boathouse, the overgrown shoreline, and the gate I had personally repaired. Maintained how? She had no answer. Friday afternoon, Vanessa finally came back. Her white sport utility vehicle stopped outside the gate, and she stepped out carrying another folder. You are creating unnecessary hostility, she said. I am keeping people off private property until somebody shows me a legal right to enter. She opened her folder and produced a subdivision plat. I recognized the paper immediately. Surveyors spend enough years around county records and old plats that the symbols become another language. Vanessa tapped a dotted line running from Bellwether Ridge toward the eastern shoreline. There, access corridor. I took the copy without touching the area she indicated. The line existed. That mattered. Where did you get this? I asked. Association records. Is this the recorded final plat? Her smile returned. You wanted documentation. Now you have it. She climbed back into her vehicle before I could ask another question. I stood beside the gate studying that dotted line until the sunlight began slipping through the trees. For the first time since buying the property, I felt uncertainty. A recorded easement can survive ownership changes. If Dale had missed something, or if an earlier owner had granted access decades ago, my deed alone would not automatically erase it. So I did what I had spent 21 years teaching clients to do. I stopped assuming and started verifying. The next morning, before I could drive to the county recorder's office, I heard metal scraping outside. I walked down the hill and found my new chain hanging loose from one post. The padlock was gone. The air carried that sharp metallic smell of freshly cut steel. Beyond the open gate, tire tracks pressed into the damp gravel. I called the sheriff. Vanessa arrived before the deputy did, holding the same plat like she had been waiting for the opportunity. She called the road public access. I called it my parcel. The deputy studied both of us, then the map. "This looks like a civil property dispute," he said carefully. He was not taking sides without recorded documents. Vanessa folded her arms. That small satisfied smile came back. I looked down at the dotted line on her plat. Something about it bothered me. Not where it went. How it was labeled. The copy was blurry near the bottom edge, exactly where survey notes were usually printed. And suddenly I knew where I needed to go next. I was at the county recorder's office before the doors had been open 20 minutes. The place smelled like copier toner, old carpet, and burnt coffee, which is pretty much the official perfume of property law. I brought Vanessa's blurry plat, my deed, my closing documents, and a legal pad. The clerk pulled the recorded Bellwether Ridge subdivision files and set them in front of me. I started with the oldest plat, then the amendments, then the developer filings. Survey work teaches you patience because the important detail is rarely printed in large letters. It hides in notes, bearings, exceptions, and tiny language near the border. Vanessa's dotted line was there exactly where she said it was. It ran from what eventually became Bellwether Ridge, crossed the eastern parcel, and ended near Hollow Pine Lake. For about 30 seconds, I thought she might actually have something. Then I found the note. Tiny lettering beneath the plat legend. Proposed recreational access. Not dedicated. I read it again. Proposed. Not dedicated. That distinction was everything. A proposed feature on a planning document was not automatically a recorded property right. I checked the final plat. The recreational corridor was gone. I checked the easement index. Nothing granting Bellwether Ridge access across my parcel appeared in the records I reviewed. Then I traced the chain of title backward. Hargrove Family Trust. Dale's father. Same lake. Same eastern strip. No recorded transfer to the association appeared in the documents I found. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips as I copied the recording information onto my legal pad. Vanessa had shown me a preliminary idea and presented it like a permanent right. But I still wanted the missing piece. Why had that proposed corridor disappeared? I called Dale from the parking lot. He answered on the fourth ring. "You finally opened that yellow envelope?" he asked. I looked through the windshield at my pickup. The cardboard records box was still behind the passenger seat. "Not yet." He chuckled. "Might be time." I drove straight back to Hollow Pine. Gravel rattled beneath the tires as I climbed toward the cabin. I carried the box inside, set it on the kitchen table, and pulled out the yellow envelope Dale had warned me not to throw away. The paper inside had gone soft at the folds. The first letter was dated 1994. A developer representing the future Bellwether Ridge subdivision had contacted Dale's father asking to purchase a recreational easement to Hollow Pine Lake. They wanted a walking path, shoreline access, and permission for residents to use the water. The second letter was the response. The request had been declined. No easement, no access rights, no transfer. There were follow-up letters offering more money. Same answer. I sat there listening to the ceiling fan click above me. The dotted line finally made sense. The developer had drawn the proposed access before securing the property rights necessary to create it. They never got them. I spread my deed beside the old correspondence and compared the legal descriptions. Then I pulled out my field notebook. There was still one thing I wanted to confirm personally. I grabbed my survey equipment and walked toward the eastern gate. The afternoon sun flashed through the pines while insects buzzed in the tall grass. I located the old iron monument near the road, then another farther south. The measurements matched. The narrow access strip connecting the lake to the county road was inside my parcel. The same strip Vanessa had been calling a community entrance. I stood beside that rust-colored survey pin and remembered her white sneakers less than 2 feet away from it. She had been standing beside the boundary marker while telling me my boundary did not matter. I could have called her immediately. I could have emailed every document and demanded an apology. Instead, I photographed the monument, packed my equipment, and went back to the cabin. Vanessa had already put her claims in writing. I wanted to know how much more she was willing to put in writing before she discovered what was inside that yellow envelope. I sent Vanessa one email the next morning. No accusations. No threats. Just one question. Please provide the recording number and county instrument establishing Bellwether Ridge access across my eastern parcel to Hollow Pine Lake. Then I waited. At 11:17, her answer arrived. The association does not require permission from a subsequent property owner to exercise established community access. I read it twice, printed it, and slid it behind the lake access policy in my folder. She had answered everything except the question. That afternoon, I called my younger sister Rachel. She had worked as a paralegal for 12 years and had a habit of treating paperwork the way mechanics treat engine noise. Give her enough documents, and she could usually tell you where something was wrong. She came over after work carrying 2 coffees and found my kitchen table covered with plats, deeds, old letters, association notices, photographs, and 5 years of real estate listings I had downloaded. "You bought a lake," she said, setting down the cups. Apparently, I bought homework. We started building a timeline. The 1994 developer request. Dale's family refusing the easement. The final subdivision plat without the proposed corridor. Vanessa's access policy. Her violation notices. Photographs of the association sign planted on my land. The cut chain. Then Rachel reached the homeowner statement showing the $480 annual lake amenity fee. She tapped it with one finger. "This is the part 1-1 explained." So did I. We searched public property listings and archived sales material from Bellwether Ridge. The language kept repeating. Community lake privileges. Private lake access. Recreational shoreline amenity. Some listings went back years. I started saving copies with dates and addresses. I was careful about what I concluded. A real estate advertisement was not proof of wrongdoing. A fee on a statement did not tell me where the money went. But together, they created a question Vanessa had never answered. Who authorized the association to sell access to property it did not own? The next morning, I emailed again. Please identify the recorded document authorizing Bellwether Ridge to collect fees for access to Hollow Pine Lake. Her response came faster this time. Association financial matters are confidential and not subject to demands from non-members. Another printout. Another page in the folder. Then Vanessa made the mistake I had been waiting for. She sent a community-wide notice. One of the homeowners I had met forwarded it to me. The notice accused the new lake owner of attempting to revoke long-standing rights and assured residents that the association would defend their paid access. Paid access. Her words. I could almost hear Rachel's voice before I called her. Save the original email. I did. Over the next several days, I stopped arguing at the gate. If residents arrived, I calmly explained that ownership and access were under dispute and asked them not to enter until the records were resolved. Most listened. A few showed me statements, purchase disclosures, or old association brochures. I photographed nothing without permission and copied only what people voluntarily provided. The folder grew thicker. Vanessa apparently interpreted my silence as retreat. By Friday, Bellwether Ridge announced an emergency homeowners meeting for the following Tuesday. The notice said the board would address what it called the Hollow Pine access obstruction. Vanessa invited me to attend. Rachel read the invitation at my kitchen table and smiled. She wants an audience. I looked at the yellow envelope, the final plat, and my recorded deed arranged beside it. Good, I said. So do I. But before that meeting, I needed one final piece. Not another argument. Not another letter. I needed a clean survey exhibit that nobody in that room could misunderstand. Saturday morning, I carried my equipment back to the eastern parcel and began mapping every monument, every boundary, the gate, the dirt road, and the shoreline. When I finished, the picture was almost painfully simple. The route Bellwether Ridge had been charging residents to use did not merely cross my property for a few feet. From the county road to the water, the critical access strip belonged to me. By Monday evening, my kitchen table looked less like a place to eat and more like a county records office after an earthquake. Rachel sat across from me with a yellow highlighter while I finished the survey exhibit on my laptop. The printer hummed beside us, pushing out 11 by 17-inch sheets that still carried the warm smell of toner. I had drawn the eastern boundary in red, the county road in gray, the shoreline in blue, and the route Bellwether Ridge residents had been using in black. There was no complicated geometry to hide behind. The black route entered my parcel and stayed there all the way to the lake. Rachel held the final subdivision plat beside Vanessa's blurry copy. Look at what she gave you, she said. I already had. Vanessa's version ended just above the lower survey notes. The words proposed recreational access and not dedicated were missing from the copy she had handed me. I could not prove she had removed them herself, and I was not going to accuse her of something I could not prove. I did not need to. The complete recorded document spoke clearly enough. Rachel arranged everything in order. First, Vanessa's lake access policy. Second, her violation letters. Third, the photograph of the association sign installed beside my gate. Fourth, the preliminary plat she had presented as proof. Fifth, the complete recorded plat. Sixth, the 1994 correspondence showing the developer had asked for an easement and been refused. Seventh, my survey exhibit. Last came the deed. I wanted that document at the end. Not because it was dramatic, although I knew it would be. Because every page before it answered a different excuse Vanessa might try. What about the fees? Rachel asked. I opened a second folder. Inside were copies of homeowner statements and sales materials people had voluntarily shared with me. $480 per year appeared again and again. Some homeowners had paid it for more than a decade. I still did not know exactly how the association accounted for that money, so I refused to guess. That question belonged to the homeowners and their board. My job was simpler. Establish what I owned. Establish what Bellwether Ridge did not. Tuesday arrived hot and unusually still. By 6:30 in the evening, cars filled the parking lot outside the Bellwether Ridge clubhouse. Through the glass doors, I could hear folding chairs scraping across the floor and dozens of overlapping conversations. Vanessa had definitely gotten the audience she wanted. I walked in carrying one document case. Rachel came with me, but sat near the back. Vanessa stood behind a long table with 4 board members and a man I recognized from his photograph on the association website, Martin Keene, the association attorney. Vanessa wore the same polished expression she had worn at my gate. On an easel beside her was an enlarged copy of the preliminary plat, the cropped one, that told me almost everything I needed to know about how the evening was going to begin. At 7 exactly, Vanessa tapped the microphone. The room settled. She described Hollow Pine as a long-standing community amenity. She said residents had relied on access for years. She called my gate an obstruction. Then she said something that made several people nod. No individual purchaser should be allowed to take away an amenity our homeowners have paid for. I glanced at Rachel. She did not move, but her highlighter stopped between her fingers. Vanessa had just said it publicly. Paid for. When she finished, Martin Keene leaned toward her and whispered something. Vanessa shook her head and looked directly at me. Mr. Mercer, you asked for an opportunity to respond. I stood, carried my document case to the front, and placed it on the table. The room smelled like coffee, air conditioning, and fresh paper. Vanessa folded her arms. Please keep this brief. I will, I said. I pulled out her version of the plat first. Let us start with the document you gave me. I held Vanessa's copy of the plat, where the front row could see it. This is what Mrs. Whitcomb gave me as proof of community access. Vanessa leaned toward the microphone. Because it is proof. I nodded once. It is part of the proof. Then I placed the complete recorded plat beside it. Martin Keene immediately leaned forward. He saw the difference before anyone else did. I pointed to the dotted line running toward Hollow Pine. This is the corridor the association has been calling public access. A few residents murmured. Now look at the recorded survey note underneath it. I read the words slowly. Proposed recreational access. Not dedicated. The room went quiet enough for me to hear the air conditioner click on above us. Vanessa shifted in her chair. That does not change decades of established use. I wondered about that too. I pulled out the yellow envelope. The paper made a dry whisper as I unfolded the first letter. In 1994, the subdivision developer asked the Hargrove family to grant a recreational easement across this exact parcel. I placed the request on the table. Then the response. The family declined. Martin reached for the documents. I let him have them. His eyes moved quickly from one page to the next. Vanessa tried again. Residents have used that path for years. You cannot simply erase history. I am not erasing anything. I opened my survey exhibit. I am showing you where the property line is. The red boundary wrapped around the eastern access strip. The black route from Bellwether Ridge entered that parcel and continued to the shoreline. I located the recorded monuments myself. The gate, road, shoreline, and access strip shown here are inside the property conveyed to me. Martin looked toward Vanessa. Do we have a recorded easement that is not in this packet? She hesitated. It was the first hesitation I had seen from her since the day she stepped out of that white sport utility vehicle. The association has always treated the lake as an amenity. Martin did not blink. That was not my question. Nobody spoke. I reached into the case one final time and removed the recorded deed. I had saved it for last because everything else explained why it mattered. I placed it beside the survey. This is the current deed. The legal description matches the parcel shown here. Vanessa's face had gone still. A man in the second row raised his hand. Then what exactly have we been paying $480 a year for? Another voice came from the back. I have paid that fee for 9 years. Then another. It was in our purchase disclosure. The room changed in seconds. The frustration was no longer pointed at me. Vanessa reached for the microphone. The lake fee supports recreational administration and community services. I looked at her. Services on whose property? She stared back without answering. Martin closed his folder and spoke quietly to the other board members. Their expressions changed one by one. Rachel sat near the rear wall, completely still, watching. I had not accused anyone of stealing money. I had not claimed fraud. I did not know enough to make either statement, and I was not interested in guessing. The documents had created a simpler problem. Bellwether Ridge had collected money connected to lake access, while the records in front of us showed no recorded easement granting that access. Martin finally turned on his microphone. Effective immediately, the association will suspend representations concerning access to Hollow Pine Lake, while council reviews the property records and the board conducts an independent accounting of lake-related assessments. Vanessa snapped her head toward him. Martin, we have not voted on that. He looked directly at her. Then I recommend you vote. For the first time all evening, I heard somebody in the room exhale a small laugh. I gathered the papers slowly, leaving copies for council. Vanessa watched me slide the deed back into its folder. 3 weeks earlier, she had stood beside an iron survey pin and told me ownership did not erase access. Now her own attorney was staring at the same boundary on my survey. I closed the document case. The loudest sound in the room was the latch clicking shut. The board voted 23 minutes later. Vanessa did not lose her position that night, but she lost something she had depended on for years. Nobody in the room automatically believed her anymore. 3 days later, Martin Keene sent me a formal letter confirming that Bellwether Ridge could not identify a recorded easement granting residents access across my eastern parcel. The association removed its community lake access sign before noon the following day. I watched 2 maintenance workers pull the posts from the ground while the smell of wet soil drifted through the pines. This time, nobody touched my gate. The board hired an independent accountant to review the lake-related assessments. I stayed out of that process. The money belonged to the homeowners, and they deserved answers based on records, not rumors. What eventually came back was messy enough without exaggeration. For years, Bellwether Ridge had collected the $480 annual charge under a recreational category that included lake-related administration, even though the association could not produce a recorded property right giving residents access to Hollow Pine. The board suspended the fee, began reviewing past charges, and sent homeowners a written correction explaining that lake access was not an association-owned amenity. Vanessa resigned as president several weeks later. I heard about it from the same older couple I had met near the shoreline. They stopped by one Saturday while I was replacing boards on the boathouse. The husband handed me a coffee and said, "For what it is worth, most of us thought the association owned the access." I believed him. That was the part Vanessa never seemed to understand. I was not angry at families who had been told for years that the lake came with their homes. They had paid money and trusted the people managing their community. So I made a decision that surprised some of them. Hollow Pine stayed private, but private did not have to mean hostile. I created a simple permission system for limited fishing and non-motorized kayaking on certain weekends. No association control, no automatic entitlement, no annual fee paid to Bellwether Ridge. Just clear rules, written permission, and respect for the property. The first Saturday I opened it, I watched a father help his little girl carry a bright red kayak down toward the water. They stopped at the gate and waited until I waved them through. That tiny pause meant more to me than Vanessa probably would have understood. Permission. One word. One enormous difference. By early fall, I had repaired the boathouse roof and cleared most of the blackberry vines from the eastern trail. I replaced the damaged chain one final time and mounted a new cedar sign beside the entrance. Hollow Pine Lake. Private property. Access by owner permission. No angry language. No warnings in giant red letters. Just the truth. Before walking back to the cabin, I noticed something beside the gate. The old iron survey pin was almost hidden again beneath pine needles and dirt. I crouched, brushed it clean with my glove, and remembered Vanessa standing beside that exact spot in her white sneakers, telling me that owning the lake did not mean I owned the way people reached it. She had been 2 feet from the answer the entire time. The evening sun stretched across the water until the surface looked like polished copper. Behind me, I closed the gate. The chain slid through the steel post with a familiar metallic scrape. Then the lock clicked into place. No shouting. No golf carts. No official-looking letters taped to my property. Just wind through the pines and water touching the dock. Vanessa thought controlling the story meant controlling the lake. She learned otherwise. Property lines do not care who has the louder microphone, and a homeowners association handbook cannot rewrite a recorded deed. Justice did not arrive with noise. It had been sitting quietly in the county records all along.